What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over Acts of Vengeance. Now, the label of this video is going to say the finale for the event, but that's not technically true. You see, when it came to Spider-Man, he has some books that came after Acts of Vengeance that really did wrap up the entire event, but for the sake of the main storyline when it comes to Acts of Vengeance, it will get wrapped up in today's video. Now remember, Acts of Vengeance was this massive crossover that Marvel gave us in the late 1980s, early 1990s, really 1989 to 1990. But the whole point of this massive crossover was to see our heroes fight against characters they don't usually fight against. So, for example, Spider-Man fighting against Graviton, or Wolverine fighting against Tiger Shark, or Iron Man fighting against the Wrecker, and the list goes on. Now, when it came to Acts of Vengeance, the whole entire operation was being run by Loki. You see, when it came to Loki, he realized that the bad guys are always losing over and over and over again to the same heroes. But then he realized, what if the villains go after a different character they don't usually fight against? And what if their powers may give them the advantage over that new hero? And then most likely they'll be able to take care of that hero for the rest of us. And that led into the Acts of Vengeance group. Now, when it came to Loki, he was able to build an inner circle to kind of help run the entire operation. Doctor Doom, the Red Skull, the Kingpin, the Mandarin, the Wizard, Magneto. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody else once again, but that was the inner circle for the Acts of Vengeance group. Now, when it came to each member of the inner circle, they believed that they were the ones in charge of the entire operation, because you had Loki appear to each and every single one of them as a lackey, some random guy who had magical powers, but he had this master plan, but he knew that other people could basically pull his plan off better than he could. And so when it came to the inner circle, they believed they were the ones in charge. In reality, it was Loki who was in charge, who was trying to achieve a goal, which was to get rid of all the Earth heroes. Now, something else I do want to mention about when it comes to Acts of Vengeance was how the actual story was told. You see, when it came to the massive crossover, each team or each solo character had their books be used as a way to tell a chapter or two or three in this massive crossover. But the main story really took place in the Avenger books. So Avengers, West Avengers, and for me personally, even Captain America books as well. But the rest of the books were really more just telling some side stories of characters dealing with other villains they don't usually fight against. But getting into the finale for Acts of Vengeance, we do pick up with West Coast Avengers number 54. Now, here's the thing about this book. It is technically part of the finale, but there's only small pieces of this book that we really have to talk about, because the main point of this book is really more of the West Coast Avengers heading back over to California, really LA, and they have to fight against the Mole Man and his creatures. Now, when it comes to the Mole Man, he's a classic Marvel villain. I mean, he first appeared in Fantastic Four #1. He was their first bad guy when they first came together as a superhero team. Now, when it comes to Mole Man, him and his creatures of Moloids and other kinds of creatures, they come from the subterranean area. Now, the subterranean area is actually a kingdom underneath the surface of the earth. But for some strange reason, when it comes to the Mole Man, he's very upset about something. And that is why he's telling his creatures to go ahead and attack LA. Now, luckily for the innocent people of LA, they do have the West Coast Avengers arrive. Now, remember, at this point in time in Marvel Comics, you had two different Avengers teams. You had the East Coast, which was the main team, the original one, and you then had the West Coast Avengers. Now, when it comes to the West Coast Avengers, they were actually trying to handle a different kind of problem. You see, in their last chapter in Acts of Vengeance, they were attacked by the UFOs. Now, the UFOs only attacked our heroes because they believed that the Avengers had attacked them at first in a different kind of setting, to only find out that they were tricked, and so the UFOs left. But when it came to our heroes, they still wanted answers, and so their main goal at first was to find the UFOs, but now they gotta handle this Mole Man problem. But now we jump over to Hank Pym, the Wasp, and also the Scarlet Witch, which honestly, I want to shift our focus over to the Scarlet Witch. And here is the reason why. So when it comes to the Scarlet Witch, by this point in Marvel Comics, she has gone through a lot. And I mean a lot. You see, for the Scarlet Witch, she had kids, but those kids were technically not real at all. But then on top of that, we kind of find out that her husband was kidnapped, the Vision, and he was reprogrammed and now acting completely different than how he used to be before he was kidnapped. And then also, she was kidnapped and brainwashed by another character. And so for her, she has gone through a lot in a very short period of time. But it seems that she fell in some kind of coma. Now, in the last chapter for the West Coast Avengers, Hank Pym was able to wake her up and said, hey, the Vision, he's in danger right now and he needs your help. And she is so protective over her husband, she woke up and got into that battle. But the problem is right now, the Vision is not here because he decided to stay with the other Avengers team. And so when it comes to our three heroes, they were heading back over to the West Coast to rejoin the rest of the West Coast Avengers. But the problem is, out of nowhere, they are attacked by a creature that's being controlled by the Mole Man. Now, that creature does do some severe damage to their aircraft, and they have no choice but to go ahead and land. Now, when they do land, well, you then have Hank Pym being able to use Pym particles to make the creature shrink down in size, something more easier to deal with. Now, when it comes to our heroes, they have no idea that currently they're being watched by Magneto. Now, when it comes to Magneto, by this point in time in Marvel Comics, he was still considered as the father to the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. But right now, apparently, he has some big plans for the Scarlet Witch. He needs her to be okay for the next part of his plan. But let's go ahead and wrap up the whole Mole Man situation for this chapter. So when it comes to Mole Man, he does tell Wonder Man why is he attacking LA for? To get revenge against the Avengers. Yes, you heard that right. So when it came to the Avengers, supposedly they had attacked Monster Island, which was a home for him and his fellow creatures. Now for Wonder Man, he knows that him and the rest of his team did not attack Monster Island at all. And so to Wonder Man, it seems like another bad guy is once again believing that the Avengers are after them, but in reality, they weren't. Just like the UFOs. And so you have Wonder Man being able to convince the Mole Man that this is all one big, huge misunderstanding. That somebody out there had tricked him into believing it was the Avengers, but in reality, it wasn't. And so once he realized that, you have the Mole Man call back both his creatures and they just leave. And the day is saved for LA. Now you do have both Avenger teams come together to talk more about what is exactly going on here. Like who is coming after them. Now the Steve Rogers and the rest of the Avengers, they realize that the other heroes like Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and also the Punisher, and the list goes on. They have gone through a lot, but not as much as the Avenger teams have. Because for both teams, they have lost their base, but also the other base that's underneath Avengers Park was also attacked as well. And so for our heroes, they're wondering who is really trying to come after the Avengers. The rest of the heroes, they're there and they're also being attacked, but we are the main targets. And the question is right now, why? Why are we the main targets? But now we have to jump over to Avengers number 313, where we actually pick up at Avengers Park. Now, Avengers Park is one of the many locations that is technically owned by the Avengers, but underneath the park is an actual base. Now, inside that base, you have Jarvis, and he's currently just watching over the place. Now, outside the park, we actually see a crowd of people who are very upset with the superheroes of the world, really. Now remember, when it came to Acts of Vengeance, one of the major plot lines was that Congress was trying to pass a new law by saying that if you are a superhero, you have to register. Now, back in the Fantastic Four storyline for Acts of Vengeance, that law got shelved. Congress is no longer going to try to pursue that law. But that effect has not hit the Avenger books just yet. And so currently you have all these different people outside the park right now very upset with superheroes. Now, when it comes to the East Coast team, they're kind of busy at the moment trying to salvage anything from Avengers Island. And remember, back in Avengers number 311, the island, which was the main base for the East Coast Avengers, was destroyed by a group of robots that was technically working for the Acts of Vengeance group. But back at the park, out of nowhere, you have the Mandarin appear. Now, when he appears, he's all like, listen, Freedom Force fought the Avengers here last time, and Freedom Force was almost able to take out the Avengers. But now it's time for a more skilled person to step in and actually deal with the Avengers. And so you have the Mandarin going out of his way to attack the park, hoping to bring the Avengers out in the open. Now, for Doctor Doom, he is very upset with the Mandarin for a lot of different reasons. The main one is that the Mandarin did not inform the rest of the group that he will be going after the Avengers. But at the same time, for Doctor Doom, he feels like it's just too soon to try again to attack the Avengers after their recent attack. But finally, it's Doctor Doom saying when he looks at the Mandarin, he sees somebody just trying to show off, to show how powerful he truly is thanks to his 10 rings, but not really trying to accomplish any goals that can help out the actual inner circle. Now, while you have Doom going off, you didn't have the Red Skull walk in. Now, the Red Skull walks in and just talks some mad trash towards Doctor Doom. But Doom does not like that at all. And so you have Doom grab the Red Skull and throw him. Now, you have the Red Skull, so the body he's in right now is not your regular human body. This body went through some upgrades to be able to fight back against people like Doctor Doom. Now, you have the Kingpin walk in, and the Kingpin is kind of able to stop Doctor Doom and the Red Skull from fighting against each other, but at the same time, he does insult their abilities to handle different kinds of situations. Now, getting back over to the Avengers, you currently have the team right now trying to salvage anything from Avengers Island that was wrecked back in the first chapter for the Avenger book for Acts of Vengeance. Now, while doing that, you didn't have Jarvis call up Steve Rogers and said, hey man, listen, the park is being attacked by the Mandarin. You gotta get over here right now. And so you have him and Wonder Man head over there to hopefully stop the Mandarin. But getting back over to the park, while you have the Mandarin just attacking the park all over the place, you didn't have the Wizard fly by, one of the members of the Inner Circle. Now, when it comes to the Wizard, he was not going to join the battle at all, except he then got attacked by Wonder Man and also Vision. And so unfortunately, he now got involved in what the Mandarin was trying to do, which was get ready to fight against the Avengers. And so now the Wizard has to fight against 2 members of the team. But now we jump over to the home of Agatha Harkness. Now, when it comes to Agatha, she's kind of like a mentor for the Scarlet Witch because she's very powerful in the world of magic. But right now, she's watching over the Scarlet Witch and she understands the Scarlet Witch has gone through a lot, but she's trying to bring her out of her coma. Now, you have Agatha realize that somebody's near her house and she walks outside, except when she does, she can't find anyone there at all. But when she turns around, the house begins to float and then fly straight up into space. Somebody has taken her home. And we kind of find out that it was Magneto. It's him trying to continue his master plan. Now, the rest of this chapter is really more of the Avengers being able to come together to fight against the Mandarin and also to fight against the Wizard. But also, you now have some reserve members as well arrive and some member of the West Coast as well being able to get there to work together to take down the Wizard and the Mandarin. Now, when it comes to the Mandarin, he realized that this is a losing battle. And so he tries to escape, which he is able to do, except when he does escape, unfortunately, the Wizard is not able to follow him. And so the Avengers were able to grab the Wizard, and now he is their prisoner. Now, when it comes to the Wizard, he does not tell the heroes what he exactly knows when it comes to the inner circle of the Acts of Vengeance operation. Really, for him, he says that he's the one in charge, and the other ones who they believe are also in charge are not really in charge because he's the best person out of the entire group. Now, you then have Loki watching him and realize that the Wizard has now been captured, but he must move on. But then he overhears that the rest of the members of the inner circle are beginning to argue once again. And so he goes into the room. And really, the whole entire argument is really more the idea that the Mandarin had left the Wizard behind. But then out of nowhere, you have everyone realize that something is off with Dr. Doom. And then out of nowhere, he just explodes. And everyone wonder what in the world is going on. But you have the Kingpin realize that it was a Doombot this entire time. Now we jump over to West Coast Avengers for the final chapter for Acts of Vengeance, where we do pick up with Thor and the rest of the Avengers. Now we're going to focus on Thor because you have Thor say it has to be Loki who behind all these different attacks. Now the rest of the Avengers, they were also informed by Cloak and Dagger that it was actually Dr. Doom. But you have Thor say no, I'm pretty sure it was Loki. But while you have the Avengers discussing different things, you did have the Wizard being able to open up a portal that is going to allow him to escape from his prison cell. And so once he's able to use that portal to get back over to the base of the Acts of Vengeance group, that is when he's informed that Dr. Doom was not there at all. Instead, it was actually a Doombot. But then you have the entire group realize, wait a second, Wizard, how are you here right now? And he says, oh, I have some device that allows me to teleport back over here. And you have Loki freak out. Now remember, the rest of the group, they have no idea that Loki is actually there. To them, it's just some random guy who's great with magic and he's their lackey. But in reality, they were his lackey. And so he gets very upset with the Wizard. Like, please tell me you did not use a teleporting device in the cell in the base of the Avengers. Have you lost your mind? And then you have him reveal that he is actually Loki, that they're being played the entire time. But before we are able to continue on with that storyline, we have to jump over to the US agent and also Wonder Man. And here is the reason why. So they were informed by Agatha that her house was taken by some unknown force, and the Scarlet Witch was inside the house. Now you have the US agent tell Wonder Man that the house is actually in space at this moment. And so you have the two characters going to space to see what exactly is going on. Now when it comes to Wonder Man, he's the one who tries to get closer to the house once they're able to reach space, except as soon as he gets close to the house, the entire house blows up, and we're left to believe that Wonder Man is now dead. But getting back over to the main plot line and really shifting our focus over to Loki, you have Loki explain why he is so upset with the wizard. He says, listen, you use a device to teleport back over here to this base. Here is the problem with that. You see, that device used energy, a type of energy that Thor is able to follow. When it comes to Thor, he will be able to follow that energy over to us. And bam, just like that, Thor arrives. But he brought the Avengers. Now, the rest of the book is really more just our heroes fighting against Loki. Now, like I said, just Loki. The rest of the group, when it comes to acts of vengeance, they all just disappear in different points of the fight. They are not trying to help Loki to fight against the Avengers. And so after a few pages, you actually have Thor being able to seal Loki away once again until a next story down the road that involves him. But the day is saved, and they were able to take down this new super villain group. Now, the ending of this book is actually really interesting, and I might sit down one day and actually cover this story arc. I don't know yet, but when you have all the Avengers go their separate ways, you have the Wasp go back to her base, or really the West Coast Avengers base, or the East Coast. Either way, she goes back to a base, and when she does, she finds the US agent, and when she finds him, this man looks defeated, but he says, you got to get the heck out of here. And she's all like, what do you mean? And where is Wonder Man? And he says, he's dead, but you got to get the heck out of here. But before she can leave, she is confronted by the Scarlet Witch, who has apparently gone evil. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.